Some stories are never solved. Some secrets are never told. Tonight, we uncover one of them. In the summer of 1999, a 17-year-old high school student named Emily Carter vanished from a small town in Ohio. She was last seen walking home from a friend's birthday party, just a 15-minute walk through a quiet neighborhood she'd known all her life. But Emily never made it home. When her parents woke up the next morning, her bed was empty, her shoes still by the door, and her phone left charging on the nightstand. Panic set in immediately. The police launched a search that same day. Volunteers combed the woods, rivers, and abandoned buildings. They found a single clue, Emily's backpack, lying in a drainage ditch a mile away from her usual route. Her books were still inside, but her wallet was missing. Rumors began to swirl. Some said Emily had been seen arguing with a classmate earlier that week. Others believed she may have been planning to run away. But her diary entries painted a very different picture. Emily had dreams of college, plans with friends, and no sign she wanted to leave. As days turned into weeks, suspicion turned towards several people. A neighbor who often offered her rides. A young man she had recently broken up with. Even a relative who lived nearby. Yet every lead collapsed under lack of evidence. The case grew colder each year, but haunting details resurfaced. In 2004, a woman reported seeing a girl who looked exactly like Emily in a gas station 2 towns over. The girl looked frightened, left quickly, and was never identified. In 2011, cadaver dogs alerted investigators near an abandoned barn, but the dig revealed nothing. Then in 2017, a chilling anonymous letter was mailed to the police station, claiming to know what happened to Emily. But the handwriting expert couldn't trace it, and no further information ever surfaced. To this day, more than 2 decades later, Emily Carter's disappearance remains one of Ohio's most haunting mysteries. Her parents still leave the porch light on every night, hoping she might one day walk through the door. And investigators admit, it's the one case that keeps them awake at night. Some mysteries fade quietly into the background of history, remembered only by dusty files in an evidence room. But others, they refuse to die. They linger like shadows, creeping into the thoughts of detectives, haunting families who never find closure, and keeping entire communities awake at night. The story of Emily Carter, a bright 17-year-old girl who disappeared without a trace, belongs to the latter category. Emily's case is not just another name in a missing persons report. Her story gripped a small Ohio town in the summer of 1999 and has continued to puzzle investigators for over 2 decades. She wasn't someone who fit the stereotype of a runaway. Friends described her as lively, responsible, and full of dreams for the future. Teachers praised her intelligence, her parents adored her, and her classmates looked up to her. She was the kind of girl whose disappearance felt almost impossible, until it happened. The night she went missing began like any other. Emily had attended a birthday party for one of her closest friends, a simple gathering with music, laughter, and the warm air of midsummer. Witnesses said she left just before midnight, smiling, carrying her backpack, and promising to call when she got home. The walk was supposed to be short, less than 15 minutes through streets she had walked hundreds of times before. Yet somewhere along that familiar path, Emily vanished into the dark. By morning, her absence was undeniable. Her bed was empty, her phone was still plugged into the charger, and her shoes, the ones she wore almost every day, remained by the door. Her parents searched the neighborhood frantically, calling friends, knocking on doors, and finally dialing 911 when it became clear that Emily hadn't simply overslept or lost track of time. What had started as a normal summer night suddenly spiraled into every parent's worst nightmare. When police arrived, they treated it as a standard missing persons case at first. Maybe Emily had stayed over with a friend, maybe she had gotten distracted. But as the hours turned into a day, and the day stretched into a week, the truth became undeniable. Emily had disappeared without leaving a single trace behind. It was the beginning of a mystery that would entangle her town, her family, and investigators for years to come. The last time anyone saw Emily Carter alive was just after midnight on July 17, 1999. The summer air was heavy and warm, the streets quiet, lit only by the occasional glow of a street lamp. Friends recall her cheerful goodbye as she slung her backpack over her shoulder and started walking down the familiar road that led back to her neighborhood. She was dressed casually, jeans, a light jacket, and her favorite pair of white sneakers. There was nothing unusual, nothing alarming, just a teenage girl heading home after a night of laughter and celebration. Neighbors later reported seeing Emily pass near the old Maplewood intersection, a corner where the road bends sharply before cutting through a row of tall oaks. It was a route she had taken countless times before, one that parents usually felt was safe enough in their quiet town. But on that night, no one saw her make it beyond that stretch. It was as though she had walked into the curve of the road and simply vanished. Her friend's house was barely a 15-minute walk from her own front door, yet by 12:30 a.m., Emily still hadn't arrived. Her parents, waiting at home, didn't panic immediately. At 17, she was responsible, but also independent. It wasn't unusual for her to stay up late with friends. Still, as the clock ticked past 1 a.m., and then 2 o'clock, the unease began to set in. Her father went outside to check the driveway, hoping to see her coming down the street. But the night remained silent, the sidewalk empty. Investigators would later piece together a timeline from the witnesses who had seen her leave the party, from the faint sound of footsteps reported by a neighbor, and from the abandoned streets she should have walked down. They knew Emily had left safely, they knew she intended to return home, but somewhere in that short stretch of road, her trail dissolved. No screams were reported, no car engines revving in the night, no signs of a struggle, just silence. It was this lack of disruption that disturbed detectives the most. If something had happened, surely someone would have seen or heard something. But there were no tire marks, no dropped belongings, no witnesses who remembered a strange vehicle or suspicious figure. Emily's last known moments remained frozen in time, a teenage girl smiling goodbye to her friends, taking a final walk down a quiet road, and then disappearing as though the darkness itself had swallowed her whole. 2 days into the search, when hope was beginning to clash with fear, investigators stumbled upon the first real clue. Roughly a mile from Emily's usual route home, wedged inside a shallow drainage ditch, they found her backpack. It was damp from the night air, the straps slightly torn as if it had been dragged or thrown, but otherwise intact. For a moment, it felt like the breakthrough everyone had been waiting for. Proof that she had been there, that her disappearance had left behind a tangible trace. Inside the bag, detectives discovered her textbooks, a spiral notebook filled with neat handwriting, and a half-empty water bottle she had carried from the party. Everything appeared ordinary, untouched, as though it had simply been set down and forgotten. But one thing was missing, her wallet. That small detail sent a ripple of unease through the investigation. If Emily had dropped the backpack by accident, why would only the wallet be gone? Was it stolen, or had someone deliberately taken it to cover their tracks? The discovery raised more questions than answers. The ditch where the backpack was found wasn't along the direct path to Emily's home. It was off to the side, near an industrial stretch of road rarely used by pedestrians. Investigators debated whether she had taken a detour that night or whether someone had purposely left the bag there to mislead the search. The eerie placement felt intentional, almost staged, as if someone wanted the police to find it. Word of the backpack spread quickly through the town. Volunteers and neighbors swarmed the area, scouring the woods, abandoned sheds, and every inch of roadside grass. Parents held their children tighter, whispers of kidnapping and foul play passing from mouth to mouth. For Emily's family, the backpack was both a lifeline and a curse. It confirmed that she had been there, yet gave no clue as to where she had gone next. Her mother reportedly clutched the bag for hours, refusing to let go, hoping it might somehow bring her daughter back. For investigators, the backpack became a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Without fingerprints, without DNA, without witnesses, it was little more than an object pulled from the shadows. Yet its presence marked the last known evidence of Emily's existence that night. A schoolgirl's bag, lying abandoned in a ditch, became the only lead in a mystery that was already beginning to run cold. As the days stretched into a week, the atmosphere in the small Ohio town shifted dramatically. What had begun as a hopeful search for a missing teenager quickly transformed into a cloud of unease that hung over every street, every household. Parents who once allowed their children to walk to school or play outside until dusk now kept them close, watching from porches with anxious eyes. The disappearance of Emily Carter had shattered the illusion of safety that the town had clung to for generations. Volunteers poured in by the dozens, armed with flashlights, posters, and determination. Search parties formed day and night, combing through wooded trails, barns, and even storm drains. Strangers who had never met Emily felt compelled to help, moved by the thought of a bright young girl stolen from her future. Helicopters hovered overhead, broadcasting images of fields and rivers, while local radio stations played constant bulletins asking for information. The town had become a hive of restless activity, each corner buzzing with rumors, speculation, and a creeping sense of dread. But alongside the unity grew fear. Whispers began circulating at diners, grocery stores, and church gatherings. Some swore they had seen a suspicious van parked near the high school days earlier. Others claimed Emily had been fighting with someone at the party before she left. None of it could be verified, yet every story spread like wildfire, feeding the paranoia that no one was safe. The once trusting community began eyeing each other with suspicion, neighbors became suspects, and friends began questioning even the people closest to them. The police presence only amplified the tension. Patrol cars lined quiet streets, officers knocked on doors, and investigators questioned classmates, teachers, and even relatives. The more they searched, the more dead ends they found. Still, the image of Emily's backpack, displayed in news reports and pinned on bulletin boards, served as a grim reminder that she had been out there, that something terrible had likely happened, and that whoever was responsible might still be walking among them. For Emily's family, the chaos outside mirrored the turmoil within their own home. Her mother barely slept, her father paced the halls at night, and her younger brother clung to the hope that she would simply come back through the door. Friends left flowers and letters on the family's porch, while strangers lit candles in vigils that stretched into the early hours of the morning. Yet despite the town's efforts and the flood of concern, Emily's absence only deepened, leaving behind a silence that grew louder with every passing day. As the investigation dragged on without solid answers, the town's unease began to twist into something darker: suspicion. With every day that passed, theories multiplied, and rumors spread faster than the investigators could control. Everyone wanted to know who had last spoken to Emily, who might have had a reason to harm her, and why her trail seemed to vanish so cleanly. The absence of clear evidence left a vacuum, and that vacuum was quickly filled with speculation. Speculation that pointed fingers in all directions. One of the first to fall under scrutiny was a neighbor, a middle-aged man who lived just a few blocks from Emily's home. Known for being quiet and reclusive, he occasionally offered rides to students heading to school or after practice. Some found his friendliness harmless, while others had always felt uneasy about his presence. Investigators questioned him extensively, searching his home and his car, but found nothing that directly linked him to Emily's disappearance. Still, whispers spread through the town, painting him as a possible predator hiding in plain sight. Attention then shifted to Emily's ex-boyfriend, a boy only a year older than her. Their breakup had been relatively recent, and some classmates described it as messy. He had reportedly tried to win her back in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, and rumors claimed the two had argued at the birthday party on the very night she went missing. Police brought him in for questioning, checking his alibi and his movements that night. Although nothing concrete tied him to the crime, the idea of a jealous ex fueled gossip, adding more fuel to the fire of suspicion. Even family members weren't spared from scrutiny. Investigators quietly looked into a relative who lived nearby, someone Emily had occasionally clashed with over personal disagreements. Although it was a delicate matter, detectives knew that in many missing persons cases, those closest to the victim sometimes held the answers. But here too, every promising lead dissolved. No inconsistencies in stories, no evidence of involvement, just another shadow that slipped through their fingers. For the community, the lack of resolution was maddening. Every face in town began to look suspicious. Was the culprit someone they passed at the grocery store? Someone sitting quietly in church pews on Sunday? Or was it an outsider who had slipped into the neighborhood that night, chosen Emily at random, and disappeared back into the darkness? The rumors never stopped, and each new theory only deepened the mystery, leaving the truth tangled in a web of fear and distrust. When investigators searched Emily's room for possible clues, they discovered something that at first seemed ordinary: a simple spiral-bound diary, tucked neatly in the top drawer of her desk. The pages were filled with the handwriting of a teenager balancing the everyday struggles of school, friendships, and dreams of the future. But as detectives flipped through the entries, they realized the diary offered more than just a glimpse into Emily's private world. It gave them a portrait of a girl whose disappearance made even less sense the deeper they looked. The entries painted Emily as a dreamer. She wrote about her excitement for college applications, her plans to study journalism, and her wish to travel beyond the small Ohio town she had grown up in. She described late-night talks with friends, the pressure of exams, and the nervous anticipation of turning 18. Nothing in her words hinted at a girl preparing to run away. On the contrary, Emily seemed rooted in her life, hopeful about her future, and connected to the people around her. Yet tucked between these bright entries were fragments that made investigators pause. Emily occasionally mentioned feelings of being watched, a sense that someone had been paying her more attention than she was comfortable with. In one entry, dated just weeks before she vanished, she wrote, "I saw that car again, the one that slows down when I'm walking home. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, but it gives me chills." The note was vague, without details about who or what she feared, but it was enough to make police wonder if she had been targeted. Her diary also revealed tension with certain people in her circle. She described arguments with her ex-boyfriend, moments of frustration with family, and even an incident with a teacher who she felt was unfairly harsh. None of it seemed unusual for a teenager, but in the context of her disappearance, every conflict took on new weight. Was one of these disputes more dangerous than it seemed? Or were investigators reading too much into the words of a teenage girl pouring her emotions onto paper? For Emily's parents, the diary was bittersweet. Each page reminded them of her laughter, her ambitions, and her gentle spirit. But it also raised haunting questions. Had she sensed danger? Had she confided her fears in those pages because she couldn't tell anyone else? The diary gave the world a clearer picture of who Emily was, but it also deepened the mystery of what had happened to her, leaving investigators with more unsettling questions than answers. In the years following Emily Carter's disappearance, the investigation slowed, but it never truly stopped. Just when hope seemed to dim, strange reports began surfacing, sightings of a girl who looked strikingly like Emily. Each one reignited the case, pulling investigators and her family back into the cycle of hope, doubt, and fear. The most chilling of these came in 2004, 5 years after she vanished. A woman traveling late at night reported stopping at a gas station 2 towns over. As she filled her car, she noticed a young woman near the convenience store entrance. The girl appeared nervous, glancing over her shoulder, as though she was being followed. The witness later insisted the girl bore an uncanny resemblance to Emily. The same long brown hair, the same pale, delicate features. Before the woman could approach her, the girl slipped inside the store, spoke briefly to someone out of earshot, and then vanished as quickly as she had appeared. When investigators pulled the station's surveillance footage, their hearts sank. The cameras had been malfunctioning that night, leaving no visual proof of the encounter. Employees remembered a girl matching the description but couldn't provide details. Had it truly been Emily, alive but in danger? Or had it been nothing more than a coincidence, a stranger who happened to look like her? The uncertainty gnawed at both detectives and her grieving family. Other reports soon followed. A truck driver claimed he saw a girl matching Emily's description hitchhiking along a highway in Kentucky. A couple reported spotting her sitting in the back seat of a car at a rest stop, staring blankly out the window as though she wanted to cry out. None of these sightings could be confirmed, but each one carried the same eerie detail. The girl always seemed scared, always seemed just out of reach, as if trapped in a situation she couldn't escape. For her family, every phone call about a sighting was a tormenting mixture of hope and despair. Could Emily still be alive, living under someone's control, waiting to be found? Or were these just cruel coincidences, false glimpses of a daughter who was never coming home? Each report deepened the mystery, stretching it far beyond the borders of her small hometown, and leaving investigators to wonder if they were chasing a ghost, or a girl still out there, desperately waiting for rescue. For investigators, every new lead promised a breakthrough, yet time and again those hopes crumbled into nothing. In 2011, more than a decade after Emily vanished, cadaver dogs were brought to search the grounds of an old abandoned barn on the outskirts of town. The property had long been whispered about, a place teenagers dared each other to visit, and some locals swore they'd seen strange activity there around the time of Emily's disappearance. When the dogs alerted in one particular spot near the foundation, detectives felt certain they were on the verge of uncovering something significant. The dig began the next morning, with heavy equipment and news crews gathered at a distance, waiting for answers. 4 hours, investigators sifted through dirt, pulling up old bones and scraps of debris. But as the search continued, the so-called bones turned out to be nothing more than animal remains. No trace of Emily. No personal belongings. Nothing that connected her to the barn. What had felt like a breakthrough collapsed into bitter disappointment, another cruel dead end in a case already filled with them. There were other moments just as haunting. In 2013, a tip suggested Emily's body might be buried along a stretch of farmland where construction crews had recently broken ground. Workers reported finding fabric that looked like clothing, buried deep in the soil. Investigators halted the project and brought in forensic teams, only to learn the fabric was nothing more than rotted tarp. The farmland yielded no human remains, no sign of Emily, only more frustration. Even technology failed to bring answers. In 2015, investigators revisited the case with new forensic tools, re-examining her backpack and its contents. They hoped DNA testing might reveal a hidden trace of whoever had handled it. The results, however, came back inconclusive, too degraded, too contaminated by the years. It was as though the bag had been deliberately placed in a way that ensured nothing useful would ever be found. Each false lead drained resources and energy, but worse, it eroded the fragile hope of Emily's family. Every time police called with promising news, her parents braced themselves for closure, only to be crushed when the trail went cold again. These endless cycles of hope and disappointment left scars that would never fully heal. For detectives, the case became a haunting reminder of how a mystery could consume years of work and still remain unsolved. For the family, it was a nightmare that refused to let go. In 2017, nearly 18 years after Emily's disappearance, investigators received a chilling piece of mail that instantly reignited the case. It was a plain white envelope, addressed simply to the police department, with no return address and postmarked from a nearby city. Inside was a single handwritten letter. The message was brief but disturbing. I know what happened to Emily Carter. She didn't run away. She was taken. The truth is buried. The words sent shivers down the spines of everyone who read them. The handwriting was jagged, uneven, as though the writer had rushed, or perhaps wanted to disguise their style. Investigators immediately sent the letter for forensic analysis. They tested it for fingerprints, DNA, and any trace evidence that might reveal the sender. But the envelope had been wiped clean. No usable prints. No saliva on the seal. Nothing but the haunting words scrawled in black ink, leaving detectives with both a clue and a dead end at the same time. The content of the letter raised dozens of questions. Who wrote it? Was it a cruel hoax, preying on the pain of Emily's family? Or was it a confession from someone who knew more than they should? The phrase, "the truth is buried," seemed deliberate, almost taunting. Some investigators believed it suggested an actual burial site, a location that still held Emily's remains. Others thought it could be metaphorical, hinting at secrets hidden within the community, things people had refused to admit for nearly 2 decades. The letter was shown to Emily's parents in the hope that they might recognize the handwriting, but they couldn't. The family was torn between cautious hope and dread. If the letter was genuine, it meant someone out there knew what had really happened. But it also meant the truth had been deliberately concealed for years, and whoever wrote it had chosen silence over justice until now. The torment of not knowing whether to believe the words only deepened the wound that had never healed. Investigators tried to track the origin of the postmark, canvassing mail facilities and questioning postal workers. But without cameras at every sorting point and with thousands of pieces of mail passing through daily, the trail went cold almost immediately. The anonymous letter stood alone, one of the most unnerving artifacts in the entire case. A voice from the shadows, claiming knowledge, offering no proof, and then vanishing just as quickly as it had appeared. More than 2 decades have passed since that warm July night when Emily Carter vanished, yet the case has never loosened its grip on the town, or on the investigators who worked it. For the detectives who first stepped into her bedroom and saw her empty bed, the memory remains sharp, like an unsolved riddle carved into their minds. Retired officers admit in interviews that Emily's disappearance is the one case they cannot forget, the one mystery that still wakes them in the middle of the night. Her parents have lived every day in a state of suspended grief. They never held a funeral, never put away her belongings, never turned her room into something new. The space remains almost exactly as Emily left it, a time capsule of the girl they lost. Posters still taped to the walls, books stacked neatly on her desk, and her favorite sweatshirt folded at the edge of her bed. For her mother, the ritual of keeping the room untouched is both painful and necessary, a way of holding on, of refusing to let go of hope entirely. Each year on the anniversary of her disappearance, the family holds a small vigil. Neighbors gather with candles, standing in silence as the glow flickers against the darkness. Some come out of respect, others out of guilt for the unanswered questions that still hang in the air. For the Carter family, these vigils are not just about remembrance, but about keeping Emily's name alive, forcing the world to remember that she is still missing, that her story is not finished. The porch light at the Carter home has never been turned off. For over 20 years, it has burned through storms, power outages, and seasons, an eternal signal meant for one person alone, Emily. To her parents, the light is a beacon, guiding her back if she is still alive, or a symbol of their undying love if she is not. The soft glow spilling into the night has become a quiet landmark in the community, a reminder of both hope and heartbreak. And so, the story of Emily Carter lingers, unresolved and unsettling. Her case remains open, her family remains waiting, and her town remains haunted by the mystery of a girl who walked into the night and never returned. The unanswered questions hang heavy. Was she taken? Was she still out there somewhere, waiting to be found? Or had the truth been buried long ago, just as the anonymous letter suggested? The silence offers no answers, only an emptiness that refuses to fade. Today, Emily Carter's disappearance remains one of Ohio's most haunting cold cases. Despite countless hours of investigation, dozens of leads, and the desperate prayers of a family that refuses to give up, no one truly knows what happened on that warm July night in 1999. She walked down a familiar road, and then, simply vanished. Her face still appears on missing person flyers, her name still lingers in the files of detectives, and her memory still lives in the hearts of a town forever changed. Every new tip, every whispered rumor, every possible sighting carries with it the weight of 2 decades of silence. And still, no answers come. Some believe Emily was taken by someone she knew. Others believe a stranger passing through town saw an opportunity and acted. And then there are those who cling to the hope that she is still alive somewhere, waiting for the moment when she can finally come home. But until the truth is uncovered, the case of Emily Carter remains a chilling reminder of how quickly a life can be stolen, how easily someone can vanish, and how deeply the questions of why and who can haunt those left behind. The porch light at the Carter home continues to burn, casting its glow into the night, a beacon for a daughter who never came back. And maybe, just maybe, that light will one day guide Emily home, or reveal the truth that has been buried in shadows for far too long. Some mysteries fade with time. But Emily's story only grows darker. The question is, how much longer can the truth stay buried? If this story chilled you, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe now, because every mystery has an untold twist.